Dear colleague, good afternoon, good morning, good evening. Now we are waiting still 2 or 3 minutes because the people, as journalists, are always a little bit late. Because I can tell you that we have registered names of colleagues, 394 from 94 countries. The people that perhaps for other reasons cannot be with us in this moment, these people will receive the tape of this interview, so they can work on it then. And it's very important because it's the first time, it's a new thing that as association we are organizing. I hope that everybody of you has found also the way for the simultaneous translation. Everybody is okay with the simultaneous translation? It's very important because we must be sure that everybody can understand all what we are talking about. And I think that for the first time, I apologize if we will make some mistake because it was never done before such a big interview with all the important person that will run to be the next president of the IOC. We will have all 7. The calendar is not completed for now because some of them are traveling around the world and they are asking, please wait a moment for the date. I think that the race for the Olympic crown was never so exciting and in some way so different. Because as you have seen, for the first time, out of 7 candidates, 4 are president of an international federation. It's something completely new. It means that we will face some changing because anyway, the IOC has to make a new thing, has to study something new. And today, I am very glad that I can introduce the lady, Kirsty Coventry, that was the first to accept our invitation, and I'm very glad that she is with us. Kirsty.
Hi, Gianni. Good afternoon, everybody.
Yeah.
Good morning, good evening. I know many of you around the world for joining us.
Yes, no, but I think that this time we are all excited because, you know, as usually the people is entering because it takes time sometimes even for the problem of the timetable because here is 2 o'clock in Zimbabwe, is 1 o'clock here in Europe, and the situation sometimes is not so easy. But anybody will receive the video and also can ask also different things. But after, you know that now we are talking with the world because when we receive the registration from 94 countries, it's very important, I think, because it means that the interest for the future of the Olympics and for the future of sport is very big, no? And this is so. So now we begin, this time from the younger, no? The youngest, the top athlete of the past. You are now Minister of Sport. You have had all the different experience, no? And especially, first of all, I think that you can introduce yourself with the 7 Olympic medal. You are still the top in Africa, no? And especially as a young woman, I want to ask. Many people are thinking you have a baby of 7 or 8 months old, no?
4 months.
And 4 months. So he was born yesterday in some way, no? And everybody is asking, how is possible to travel around the world with the young kids and so on? But I think that you have experience, a lot of experience, because even before you did. So tell us, tell to the people how it's possible.
Well, thank you, Gianni. It's really a pleasure for me to be here. I am excited to speak with all of you today. Just first and foremost, I would have loved to have been the youngest, but most of you know that our founder, Pierre de Coubertin, was actually the youngest at age 33. So I've got a good decade on him, which I am proud of. But really, it's a great honor to be in this race. And yes, I have a young family, as do a few other candidates. But as Gianni said, when I had my first baby, she's now turning 6 in May. I was leading the Athlete Commission. I was appointed minister. I was running my foundation and numerous things. And before she was 1, she had been to 10 different countries around the world. I have an incredible network of support from my husband and family. And Lily, the newest addition to the family, is already been to 5 countries. So we're on a record streak here. We're very lucky. Again, I'm hugely supported. This is a normal for us. It's a normal way of life, normal way of living. And I think it's a good way to show that women are just as capable as men, even if we are to be expected to be full-time mothers, wives, daughters, etc., etc.
Okay, listen, but now IOC is very proud to have reached the equality of gender. But in this race, you are only 1 woman out of 7. So it means that to run for the top position is not still the equality of gender. Why? Why you think?
I think that we have reached the gender equality on the field of play, and we saw that for the first time in Paris, which we're very proud of. The movement has been doing an incredible job over the last few years within the membership, and we're now at 42%, I believe, of women of the members. But we still have a long way to go. When we look at international federations, that drops down drastically. When we look at national Olympic committees, it drops down drastically. When we look at national federations, I think it rises a little bit, but still not gender equal. So we still have a lot of work to do. And I'm excited about leading that movement. Women are ready. They're ready to lead. I look at it as an opportunity to push through boundaries so that when my 2 girls are growing up, they don't have the same boundaries. They don't have the same pushback, right? It's an easier path for them to take. So that is a little bit of why I'm running. Not the main reason, but I think a very strong reason to be able to put my hand up and say, let's do it. It's time.
Okay, now let's go to a very difficult situation regarding gender. There is a big debate about transgender athletes and so on. What is your opinion? Because it's a very sensitive problem that is concerning human rights and a lot of this also cultural problem. What is your opinion about this?
So I think that we, as the IOC, need to take a little bit more of a leadership role. I would like to sit down with all the international federations and come up with a common framework for all of us to work within. It will obviously depend on the sport. We have equestrian that already men and women compete against each other. So the topic is not as big in certain sports. But each federation over the last few years have really worked quite diligently with their medical teams to come up with rules and regulations that they feel best protects the female category for their sport. And I think as the IOC, we should take a leadership role in understanding all of these differences. Most are actually very similar, and take a leading role in the decision that we're going to make in order to protect the female category.
No, because it's something that is coming back. Because if you remember, it was the IOC that many years ago has closed the situation of the gender test when there was the swab in the mouth, no? Because they said that was against the human rights and so on. But now I think that we are going back to the situation. We have to find a solution because the problem is quite big. And it really, I can understand it is not so easy because everybody has, every human person needs to have his own right. But the problem is that where we can find the right solution. You think that is still possible or not? Because the debate
I think
is
it's
quite
possible.
hard.
I think that it is possible. And I think, again, the way that the IOC, what is in place right now, is the decision was left up to the international federations. And the majority of the international federations did a lot of work with their medical teams, with medical and scientific research, to come up with rules and regulations that fit their sport. What I'm saying is that as the IOC, we should bring everyone together, try and understand if there is a way to put out a common framework and take a bit of a leading role. That's going to take sitting down with the international federations, with their medical teams, with medical and science. I'm not a medical doctor. We need to rely on the facts. We need to rely on medical research and what that is showing us, and then come up with a common ground and a common framework that will be able to protect the female category.
I'm afraid that you will need a lot of time, because it's not so easy to make quick decision, because to put all together, all the mind is very difficult. Because I've seen that in some sport they take already position, in other sport is more not so clear now, but I think that is necessary.
100% necessary. And I do think that there's been a lot of work done, as said before, by the international federations already. So it's really about bringing everyone together and finding a solution that's a common ground, common framework, and above anything else, protecting the female category.
Yeah, because this is a point. So staying on the field of athletes, there are a lot of things we are discussing now. There was also the problem of discussing, do you think that can be correct to put prize money in the Olympics or not?
I personally am not a fan of prize money. I would rather try and identify new ways of better supporting athletes on their journey to becoming an Olympian. For me as an athlete, that was the hardest time for me. It was hard to find sponsorship. It was hard on my family, and the Olympic Solidarity Scholarship that I managed to receive really added a lot of value. So I would rather put more focus on identifying direct funding to athletes before they get to the Olympic Games. And then after the Olympic Games, once they are looking at retirement, how do we help them in that next phase of life? I also think that there are opportunities with technology today to leverage the Olympic Games as a platform. In the past games in Paris, we saw a number of athletes leverage their social media platforms, and they have created a more sustainable way of being able to become influencers and promote different products and make a living for themselves. So how can we help athletes better understand and navigate those platforms so that they are consistently growing their own individual businesses? That for me is more of where I'd like to focus my time, rather than just on a once-off payment at the games.
Okay, still to the athlete, we are living very difficult time politically, with war around. Now next year there will be an Olympics, and now it looks that maybe that there will be something to stop the war in Ukraine, and perhaps also in Palestine. There are other wars in Sudan, other war in Congo and so on. What do you think that with the athlete, what will be the guideline to have the possibility to perform or so on? Or you think that is necessary still to have the clause, somebody cannot come to the Olympics, or people has to have the possibility as independent, if it's possible to be independent also?
Mm-hmm. I think above anything else, it's our duty as the IOC to ensure that all athletes can participate at the games. Now, that's going to look different for a number of different athletes. But at the end of the day, I do believe that we need to find a holistic way of, sadly, dealing with athletes from conflict areas. You mentioned 2 conflicts that are ongoing in my continent, and sadly, they're growing. They're getting bigger and bigger. So it's not just the bigger wars and the conflicts that are happening in Europe and the Middle East, but there's wars and conflicts in Africa. And how are we going to protect these athletes and support them? I know from my own personal story, my country was going through internal turmoil in 2004 and 2008 when I won my medals. And it could have been very easy for the international community to not allow us to take part. And I look at that and say, well, where would my life had been? What would my life be today? So I'm grateful that I was not held accountable for what the leaders and governments were doing. I think there are always sensitivities that have to be taken into consideration, as we did for Paris. But again, what needs to be done is we need to acknowledge that sadly, there are more and more conflicts. And how are we holistically going to be dealing and supporting and protecting athletes that are facing these challenges across the world, not just from specific areas, but all across the world?
Yeah, okay. Now let's go to the other facts. You spoke about zero tolerance with corruption, with match fixing, with the doping. So what do you mean? Because also, you know, match fixing or result manipulation and doping are very connected.
Yeah.
Because the criminal organization are doing this. They use the doping also for after to manipulate the result. So how is possible, you think, that we can at least stop some really important business there?
So I think first and foremost, there's an incredible amount of work that already gets done by WADA, by the ITA. We, as the IOC, during games time, work with Interpol. So we work with different agencies to help control these different match fixing, etc., during the games. But I think what needs to happen is we need to be proactively helping national Olympic committees and countries develop and strengthen their rules and regulations and their laws. So in Zimbabwe, we are a big cricket nation. There's a number and a lot of match fixing that happens in and around that sport, as well as soccer. So we are changing our legislation at the moment to ensure that we work with a police task force, our Central Intelligence Agency, as well as our border control, to make sure that we also work with the region to know when certain personalities are coming in and out of our countries and SADC. And we do believe that this is going to strengthen, and we're doing that in collaboration with the big international federations. So with the ICC, they have a lot of information, and I'm hoping that this law is going to strengthen the ability to penalize these personalities and to hold them accountable, but also to deter. And we have seen it work really well in South Africa. South Africa came out with very strong rules and regulations in and around this specific topic a few years ago. Sadly, we got a lot of the people that were working in match fixing sports in South Africa just moved across the border to South Africa. So we're now strengthening those rules and regulations. But I do think that there is some work to do with countries, specifically through the National Olympic Committees, to help strengthen rules and regulations so that we start from the bottom of trying to create cleaner atmospheres in our sport.
No, because the problem is that is the problem of even of the punishment of this kind of people. Because, for example, sometimes now with the doping and with the match fixing, you don't risk to go to jail. And so it's easier to manipulate the result than to go to sell the drugs in the street because it's less dangerous. So this is the problem. It's a cultural problem also that has to be solved. I think that only the new legislation in every country can change something. If not, it's not possible.
Yeah.
Anyway, now it was my opinion, but it's your opinion that counts this time. So after, I think that from the journalist point of view, no, you know, I've seen that at your Congress, now elective Congress, after the election, can happen to you or to one of your competitor, there is no press conference, but there is the mixed zone, no? And I think that this, because I've been told that all the candidates prefer the mixed zone to the press conference. And I think that is on my point of view, is completely wrong, because the mixed zone, you know, is a mess. it can be wide and so on, but at least the five people in front of you can understand, but the people on the back, and after there is no simultaneous translation. I think that I hope that one day there will be possible to also rewrite the right also of the journalist, because if not, we will be always cut out from every possible read work. Because in this moment, it looks that IOC is in a kind of ivory tower, and we have to look from outside. I think that we are working together for the future of the young generation. So why to be completely cut off? So this is the problem.
Well, Gianni, I appreciate you sharing that, and a few of your colleagues have shared the same sentiment. And I think that we have to learn to work together, and we have to be able to leverage different things and how we communicate, and media and talking to the media, and being able to lean on the media to get specific messaging out is always extremely valuable. And so we will need to ensure that our communication is strengthened.
Yes, but I think that this now I would like to give the floor to my colleague, no, to my colleague, because it's important that to listen to their request. I hope that they are not so shy, no, to continue on this way. Anybody has raised the hand? Tracy Holmes.
Thanks, Gianni. Hi, Kirsty. Nice to see you. My question is with regard to, it's kind of big and it's small. It's an interesting problem, and I wonder how you would address it if you became the president. And that is, South Africa used to be banned from the IOC during apartheid. At the moment, there's only one country practicing apartheid. It's gender apartheid, and that's in Afghanistan. The biggest sport there is cricket. Now, the International Cricket Council is going to be one of your federations for the next Olympics in Los Angeles, and they are not even fulfilling their own rules, which say that to be a full member, you must support both men's and women's cricket. The Afghanistan women's cricket team lives in Australia after they fled their country. Would you, as the IOC president, take on that responsibility to lobby for the women of Afghanistan with one of your sports for the LA Olympics ahead of those games?
Yes, definitely. 100%. It's not, for me, that's not even a question, really, Tracy. I think that we have to. And I am actually going to be meeting with the new ICC chairman in the next week. He and I are going to be sitting down. I know that he has just taken over. So this will be a question that I will gladly be asking him, how we are going to deal with it and how we're going to walk it. And that was part, that is part, as you all know, that is part of a sport becoming a part of the Olympic program, is making sure that the development of both men and women's sport across the globe is done equally. So we will definitely have that conversation, and I would 100% be honored to fight for women's rights across the world.
When you meet with him and get that answer, can you let us know, please, next week? Yes. When you extract the answer from him? Thank you.
Sure, no problem. Thanks, Tracy.
Now you go to Rodrigo. Rodrigo, you have to open your microphone.
Non so se loro possono. Can you hear me right now, Gianni?
Yes.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. Kirsty, it's a pleasure and honor to salute you from Mexico City. How can you describe the biggest challenge of sport right now? Actually, for you, what is the biggest challenge of the sport to conquer?
Oh, goodness. I think it depends on the different regions and the different continents. And I think that's really what makes the Olympic movement quite complex, because every region faces something a little bit different. I think as just in general, it's really identifying talent, and from identifying talent, supporting that talent. So from national Olympic committees to really be able to focus and deliver on supporting their athletes, that would be a big one. Gender equality, as we've just heard, across sports. And then you come into governance, transparency, sustainability, all different topics. Revenue generation, what is that going to look like? How are we going to ensure that we're making good decisions? It's not just about raising more and more money. It's also about making good decisions. It's about making good decisions on how we're spending that money every day, getting rid of the ugly costs, ensuring that we're reducing the bad costs, but everything is within every corporation. We have, costs that just are there that we don't necessarily like. And it's about improving the good costs. And what does that look like? So revenue and how we're spending the money and what that's going to. And then when you look at our specific stakeholders, what is the topic of conversation with the international federations? They're wanting more support. They are wanting to have more direct influence during the build phase of an OCOG, not just towards the end or during games time. How do we involve them with that? When you look at the athletes, how are we going to get athletes more direct funding so that they can live out their dreams? How are we going to help bridge the gap between national Olympic committees, the very big ones, the very professional ones, and then smaller ones like my own country, right? How are we bridging that gap so that there is more professionalism across our sports? So I really do think it's a very big question, because there's so many different things that we need to look at. But again, what I feel right now, whenever there's a new shift and there's a change in an organization, I think it's time for us to have a little bit of a pause. And I want to just take a pause, evaluate where we are. What is it that we as an organization want to continue doing? We know that the Olympic Games are our heartbeat, right? And then we have all of our incredible stakeholders, our athletes, and then the next layer, our NOCs and our IFs. How and what are we going to continue to fight for? What is it that we need to maybe get rid of and we need to shed? And what is it that we need to change and adapt to be relevant in today's world? So that will be a big piece of work, and I would like to start that very early on within being successful in March.
Okay, thank you. So now we go to Zarina. Zarina, is your time from Kazakhstan. Open the microphone, Zarina. Okay.
First of all, I would like to say AIPS for this opportunity, and my questions: how do you plan to combat doping, especially considering the complex political factors that influence this process?
Mm-hmm. Thank you for your question. So I think if I understood it correctly, you were asking about doping and how we're going to navigate and protect the doping system and the ecosystem, especially when it comes to very sensitive political areas.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes, I think so.
I mean, above anything else, we have to ensure that the field of play is clean. So if there are rules and regulations that need to be followed, then those rules and regulations need to be followed. I'm very clear on those things, because being an athlete, I had to fill out all the Adam's whereabouts. I feel that as athletes, we are held under a microscope. And so every other stakeholder should be held to the same accountability. And again, as I said, making sure that the field of play is clean and fair for all athletes is the #1 priority, because I think if we lose that, we lose the trust from our fans, we lose the trust of our sponsors. So we have to really ensure that our integrity remains strong.
Okay, thank you. Now we go to Wojciech, Poland. Wojciech, are you ready?
Yes, can you hear me?
Okay, your
Yes.
mustache are ready. Yes, you can go.
Thank you very much. Hello. My question is about what is your origin in the IOC administration, which is the Athletes Committee. And what I've noticed is that quite a few of its members in the past, but also in present, are, of course, active athletes by the definition of the Olympic Charter. But in fact, some of them have already finished career. Well, for example, Alison Felix was lately elected. Well, she also ended her career lately. And I see the entire IOC membership also consists of quite a few former athletes, also obviously the Olympian athletes. And what I wanted to ask is, how are you gonna to deal with the fact that well, the voice of former athletes is within the IOC, not especially via the athletes committee. So how to increase the voice of the active athletes, not by the definition of the Olympic Charter, but active athletes.
Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate that. So obviously, you know that I was the chair of the Athletes Commission, and I became a member of the Athletes Commission while I was still competing. I competed for another 4 years until I retired. And what the Athletes Commission is doing an incredibly good job with is staying in touch with active athletes, as you've just said, active athletes. So athletes that are competing today. And they're doing that because they've really put a huge emphasis on ensuring that we have direct contact with athletes that are competing today across the world. We fought really hard to ensure that we had specific funding coming to national Olympic committees for their athlete commissions, so that we're also getting constant feedback back, and that will continue. And we need to ensure that not just at games time, right? Because games time, it's high pressure. There's a lot going on. We want to make sure that we're speaking directly to athletes outside of the games, leading up into the games and after the games. That's very important. And we can only do that through the structures. So through our national Olympic committees, through the international federations, through the continental associations. The continental associations are really doing some very good work with their athletes, and they go and attend their continental games where they speak directly to athletes. They speak with they're not just talking with athletes, but they're asking them questions. What is it that you need us to do? How can we help you? How can we improve? All of that direct communication from active athletes today will remain a very, very high priority on my list anyway, because they are the ones that we're putting this entire show on for, right? Like, we're putting the Olympic Games together so that the athletes can come, can compete, and can win medals, can make their countries proud, and can achieve their dreams. So their voices are extremely important.
Okay, now we go to Steve from UK. Steve, open the microphone.
Okay. Hi. Yeah, so my question is, the whole idea of the Olympics, we've got the best athletes in the world in all sports trying to compete. But in the sport I cover, in football, or at least in men's football, that's not the case. The best male footballers don't compete in the Olympics. So I just wanted to find out what your view is on the future of football in the Olympics. Should we keep it the same? Should it be changed so the best do compete? Should it be removed entirely? Should futsal be included instead of football? So what's your opinion on this?
Thanks, Steve. I think it's a great question. And I think I would potentially need to go and have a good conversation with Infantino. There was a long conversation and debate between the IOC and FIFA a long time ago, where it was then decided that under 23s would come to the games for soccer. And that opens up quite a lot of opportunities for more countries to take part, and not just your sort of World Cup top 8 or top 10, right? So I think a lot of it comes down to ensuring that there's a fairness globally, where we allow for countries from around the world to take part in the Olympic Games. But I'm always open to listening to feedback, and to listening to what the leaders of FIFA are saying, what they would like to see. there could potentially be a discussion around what does it look like opening it up to all age groups, which would then include the best footballers in the world. But again, I don't think I would have a specific stance on that as yet, because I really would need to go back to the soccer fraternity and ask them what it is that they would want to see in the future with the Olympic Games. But soccer is very popular for the Olympic Games. And it does really open up so many incredible opportunities for countries outside of your sort of top 30 or 40, which I think is very important for the Olympic movement. Gianni, you're on mute.
I made a mistake, sorry. I feel too emotional, you know, I'm too young. Jakub, it's up to you. From Poland. Jakub, open, yes?
Yes,
Okay.
can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, Mr. Coventry, first of all, we are honored that you found the time today for us. And I have question about that. I have two questions.
One, because if
Okay.
not, is a problem.
Okay,
Other people.
one question. Okay, that's that we know that boxing will not be at the Olympic Games in Los Angeles for now. What is the current situation and what is your position on this matter? And one thing, because in last weekend I saw Otylia and Jędrzejczak at the Sports Championships Gala in Warsaw, and who asked the great your warmly?
Thank you. Thank you, Jakub. I appreciate the question. Boxing, I feel that we've got quite a bit of work. We have quite a bit of work to do for boxing. Ultimately, I would like to see boxing on the program, on the Olympic program, because there are a number of athletes from the global south, from countries in Africa and Asia and South America that don't generally win medals, that have real opportunity to win medals through this sport. But we have to ensure that the athletes' health is being taken into consideration. We have to ensure that there is good governance and transparency within the organization. We have to ensure that match fixing, as we were talking before, is being taken seriously. And we haven't been seeing that from the federation. So you all have been following it very closely. I think most of you may even be more up to date with it than I am, because I know some of the journalists online follow predominantly just boxing. But ultimately, we need to work towards ensuring that the sport is going to be a safe environment for our athletes, and that we're going to see transparent, good governance. So we've got a long way to go, but I'm hopeful.
Okay, thank you very much.
Good. We go to May. May Zhao. You can.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, sure, yes.
Yeah. Hello, Miss Coventry.
But you're on the moon. Where are you? On the moon?
Yes, I feel on the moon. I have one question, but divided into two parts. My first half part is with the second phase of COP16 opening tomorrow. Yeah, we are also reporting that. How can future Olympic better promote sustainability and biodiversity protection?
Okay. Thanks, May. I think that's a great conversation. Sustainability is something that we have to look at, and it's not just about sustainability when it comes. A lot of the conversation fully falls onto sustainability when it comes to venues, when it comes to weather. So when we're talking about the Winter Olympic Games, we're really looking at having to make some really big decisions when it comes to the Winter Olympic Games, purely because climate change, seasons are changing, and we need to ensure that we're going to have the best available options to athletes to compete during a Winter Olympic Games, right? But I think sustainability can be worked on from the entire ecosystem. And what I mean by that is sustainable in our internal practices, as well as the external practices. So how, as an internal organization, are we running things from a day-to-day basis? And I think that can filter through down to the national Olympic committees and the international federations. We are already seeing that when we're doing more Zoom interactions like this one, using more emailing of soft copies, not so many hard copies and papers anymore. And then you have the bigger external projects that the Olympic Games works on, and that would look at your venues, fan engagement, traveling. You know, when you hold an Olympic Games, you've got all these fans traveling to that company. How are we offsetting all these different exposures? That has to be done concurrently with the organizing committees. And Paris did an extremely good job. I know some of you have seen all the numbers, so I won't go through those again. But Paris really did a very good job on very sustainable models in certain things. And now we need to ensure that we're taking those best practices, sharing them with Milano Cortina, as well as LA 2028, as well as Brisbane, et cetera, and find new ways of improving on what we've already done to date.
Thank you. May I allow to ask a second half?
No, because there is a long queue. I'm sorry.
Thank you. Thank you.
Alexander from Ukraine.
Hello, everybody. Hello, Johnny. First of all, thank you, Johnny and IAPS, for this exclusively possibility to speak with Mrs. Coventry and of course to Mrs. Coventry for this opportunity. As you said, you would like to all the athletes to take part in the competitions and this normal desire. But when it comes to war and athletes supporting war, the situation looks different, doesn't it? Exactly today is the third year when Russia starts bombing Ukraine and continues this horror, bombing every day and every night, even this night. And many leaders comes to Kyiv today to support Ukraine. So, yeah, there are a lot of wars, but for every nation, their war is specific and important, yes? And why important for Ukrainian athletes and Ukrainians that the representatives of other country, as Russia, to not participate in Olympic Games, that because this country kills Ukrainians every day, civilians, yes? So, when we're talking about this situation, this possibility is very important to understand. And just let me, but I'm sure that you know that it was a rule that during the Olympic Games, all war stopped. But it doesn't work. It not works now, yeah? So this is a question. What is your understanding in your point of view on this situation? What do you think about Russian athletes and Russian flag on the future Olympics? Because it's very important for us to understand is your vision as a possible new president of the International Olympic Committee. Thank you.
Thank you. And I appreciate that question. And I can appreciate, and I thank you for acknowledging that there are complexities with each and every single conflict that's happening around the world. And it's different for every single conflict that is going on at this point in time. It's sad to see so many conflicts in our world today. For me, and again, we saw in Paris how we allowed for some athletes to take part as neutral athletes and independent athletes. This was done on a basis of following specific regulations and rules and taking into account the context that you just shared with us. At the end of the day, the Olympic Games needs to be a safe environment for all. So just as important as it is to have all athletes take part in the Olympic Games, it's our duty as the IOC to ensure the safety of every single one of those athletes during Games time. So we will need to ensure that we take the appropriate measures and each context of each war into account before making any final decisions. And this is how I believe we can ensure that we show respect to the countries that are going through these terrible times. But it's also a way that we can show respect to the athletes that do not have the opportunity to stand up or against what their countries or leaders may be doing. and show them support. Again, as I said, it has to be done taking into context everything, all the sensitivities, and at no time must there be any situation that during an Olympic Games, it can cause any amplified response or hurt to any athlete during an Olympic Games.
Okay, now we go to Tunisia. Mohammed.
Thank you, Johnny. Good luck for Kirsty for your campaign. Just my question is based on you said that you will find support for the athletes themselves during their career or after their career, even in case of retirement or something like that. But my question, do you have in your plan funds for the countries to prepare the infrastructure that may, let's say, give birth of new athletes? Because the infrastructure is the key to have athletes. That's it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mohammed. That's a great question, and thank you for asking it. I know that there are international federations that dedicate specific parts of their budget already to infrastructure and infrastructure programs. That's not something that the IOC has done, but we have, and part of my plan is to sit down with our Olympic Solidarity team and with the identify the different federations. They have specific development programs, and try and come up with linking those two programs together. Because right now on Olympic Solidarity, for example, we have 15 world programs. Not every national Olympic committee has the ability to use all 15 of those programs. So can we be a little bit more flexible with allowing the national Olympic committees to choose which programs they would rather use or utilize, and have the same amount of money that would be spread across all 15, maybe pushed into 5 programs. And one of those programs could be upliftment of facilities.
Okay, now let's go to TAP. TAP from Angola.
TAP, you're still on mute.
You have to put your thing. TAP, you have to unmute the microphone. You must open the microphone. Open the microphone. You are not so much digital, okay? You're not so much digital. Okay, if you can't, Juja, can you enter, because TAP is not able to use the microphone. Juja, microphone.
Yes.
Okay. Yes. Perfect.
Yeah.
Done.
Hi, Kirsty.
Hi.
Congratulations on your candidacy. And going back to the topic of doping, I understand that the field of play should be clean. Unfortunately, we are echoing because we're in a big room. Many of the AIPS colleagues, my colleagues here, so maybe you can hear me now.
Yeah.
So that's clear for me as an ex-Olympic gymnast, that the field of play should be clean. That's okay. But the accountability, when it comes to the legal perspective, you probably know that there are some very, I would say, strange cases that made quite big debut even within the sporting world. The latest one is Yannick Sinner's case within the tennis world. And if I just look at some other cases, for example, even we have a case in Hungary with an Olympic bronze medalist swimmer who was never convicted with any substance, but he had some changes in his biological passport, which was never proven biologically. But still he had to face the legal case, and now he's at the Court of Arbitration for fighting for his truth. Listen, for 2.5 years by now. So this Olympic swimmer's career is over. So what I'm saying is, when it comes to the accountability and also not feeling the double standards of the legal process, I think we have a lot of problem in the trust of this decision making in the legal process. So I think there is something definitely should be done, and not just because of there is a lack of trust with the world of anti-doping agency. You know probably that even the United States has just pulled out the finances from WADA, but also when it comes to the accountability on the legal aspect, I think we have big problems. What is your plan about that?
Yeah, I mean, as I said before, and thank you for the question, being a former athlete, as yourself, as many on the line, we know that if we were caught cheating or doping, we were immediately suspended, sanctioned, etc. So for me, I think all stakeholders should be held to the same accountability. It's not a popular thought, but I really do, I believe in it. I've implemented that even in my own country, where we had very bad corruption, manipulation, sexual harassment, and abuse in our soccer. And we made the decision to step in and ban our soccer federation, which led us to being suspended from international football for 18 months. But it was the right decision. And it was a tough 18 months coming from a country that loves soccer, but it was the right thing to do. And so I am not going to be afraid of standing up and saying that every stakeholder should be accountable. A case should not have taken that long to where it ends an athlete's career. If there is wrongdoing on the athlete's part, okay, then suspend them, give them their time and sentence. But if it was mismanagement from another counterpart, they should also be held accountable for doing that, because it's just, again, one standard for athletes and another standard for the other stakeholders. It should all be the same.
Thank you.
Okay, so now, Tap, are you ready to open the microphone? Tap? No, Tap is not going. Okay, Vincenzo, Ciccone.
Thanks, Gianni, and thanks to all ISPS for this big opportunity, and thanks also to Miss Coventry for her presence. I spoke about the athlete in Nation in War that you have spoken before, Miss Coventry. You have said about the right of this athlete, but I asked this about the past experience of the Olympics in Paris, another edition. There is a not equality between the individual sport players and the team sport players. I pose an example. Russian as the finalist in double women tennis, but there are not volleyball player of Russian in Paris, for example. Which is your opinion, and which is your idea for take the right of the athletes, of the all athletes, not differently between individual sport and team sports?
Okay, I'm not sure I understood. So you're saying the treatment is different between this
individual sport and team sports.
And team sports. Okay, in which way? Sorry, I just
in
want
which in way, for example, in Paris there are tennis players from Russian individual tennis player, but there is not the Russian representative of volleyball, for example.
Oh, okay. So that came down.
You said before there is essential to keep rights of the athletes, but
Yes.
There are athletes, tennis player and also volleyball player, for example, is my example.
Okay, well, that's quite a specific case because it came down to the country, and in the rules that the IOC put across for there to be Russian neutral athletes taking part in Paris, there were not allowed to be any team sports, and a team sport was more than one.
Okay, now we go to Zimbabwe. Farai.
Thank you, Gianni, and thank you, Kirsty, for having us. But just a quick one. So Kirsty, leading a sport in a country with financial constraints and deeply polarized audiences has required you to make tough decisions while maintaining unity with global conflicts in Africa and Europe, as well as intense debates on transgender inclusion. How do you see these leadership experiences shaping your ability to be able to steer IOC through similar challenges? And what unique strengths do you think you bring to the race that probably sets you apart from your contenders?
Hi, Brian. Thank you for the question. It's a great question. I think the last 7 years, and you have seen a lot of the past 7 years and what we've gone through. And as you've said, with inflation, with hyperinflation, with budgets that we have to be very creative with, in an environment that's ever changing, in an environment where we have put in some very strict rules and regulations in and around the expectations that we have of the national federations and what they need to do in order to access funding, in order to access the support from government. I believe all of these situations have given me incredible skills, definitely a thicker skin, coming from an athlete. But I've been able to navigate these last 7 years, I believe, really well, but not just well. I've been able to do that because I've had a solid and strong team who have been willing to take tough decisions because it's been the right thing to do. So we've been led by our values. And that's really what we've been trying to change. And I firmly believe that with the strength of the membership within the IOC, with the strength of the ecosystems from the international federations, the national Olympic committees, the athletes, hearing directly from the athletes, leaning on all of these different stakeholders, taking them into account and giving them the opportunity to be a part of the decisions is what is going to strengthen our movement. And I have been fortunate enough in Zimbabwe to have been able to do that. The decisions that you make are not always going to be popular, but generally when they're not popular decisions, they're generally the right decisions.
So now we go to Musa Sise.
Hi, Gianni. Hi, everyone. Greetings, Christy, from the west coast of the Gambia, the smiling coast of Africa. And thank you for your time and thank you for speaking to us. I have two observations that I hope you can help us alleviate if and when you happen to be elected. Now, firstly, many of journalists around the world do crave for this Olympic experience, and it eludes most of us seriously. And most practicing journalists would go in their entire life in sports without even being featured in any Olympic Games. And it is an issue that we believe that as aspiring young journalists around the world who are dying to cover the Olympic sports all over the world, hoping to see them cover at least a single Olympic is an issue. Of course, the challenges varies from, lack of funds, the accreditation, and the non-issue of visas. Can you tell us, if any, do you have any plans to see how such a situation can be alleviated? Thank you.
Thank you, Musa. We appreciate that. I think that there's always opportunities to increase and look at new ways of including media from around the world. Part of my vision is ensuring that we are going to be reaching 9-year-olds across the globe, not just 9-year-olds that can afford to watch on linear TV, right? So how are we going to use, I know, for example, in Zimbabwe, we're about 15 million population and 13 million people have smartphones. So how are we going to give greater access to the Olympic Games to people from new regions across the world, including that of journalists? Something that we will definitely look at, and I will look at with the IOC team and find ways of ensuring that we offer the right opportunities to journalists from around the world to take part and experience the Olympic Games.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Let's go to Martin from Kenya.
Thank you, Gianni. Hi, Ms. Coventry. Thank you for making time for us today. Africa is the only continent that has never hosted the Olympics to date. I know we'll be having the Youth Olympics next year, but the big games, the big games we've never had, we've never hosted it. What do you think the IOC? What do you think we need to do better, and how do you think IOC comes in? If you're elected as the president, what do you think what are some of the steps you'll take to ensure that Africa hosts the game in the foreseeable future? Or even if it's not hosting the games, what will you do in terms of infrastructure? Because one of the main reasons why Africa has never hosted the Olympics is it has to do with infrastructure. How can we try and improve the infrastructure in such a way that the Olympic sports that we have, most of them are readily available to be played, for training, to be played and to be hosted across the different Africa venues that we have? Thank you.
Thank you, Martin. So as you said, yes, we're very excited that the Youth Olympic Games are coming to Dakar next year. We're very much looking forward to that. And I know as Africans, we're very excited about welcoming the world to the continent and showing them how much we love sport and how much sport is a part of our culture. In terms of Africa hosting the Olympic Games, we are seeing a lot of interest. We're going to be watching Morocco host the AFCON, and then later on hosting the World Cup. We see that Egypt and South Africa are in dialogue with the IOC around the Olympic Games. And we've seen South Africa host an incredible World Cup in 2010, as well as other high rugby tournaments and cricket tournaments in 2027. We will be co-hosting with South Africa, Zimbabwe, and Namibia, the ICC Men's World Cup, which in cricket, which is very exciting. So the reason I'm mentioning all these things is that the continent as a whole is really putting a lot of focus on bidding for bigger international sporting events. And I think that is showing a lot of promise. I think, as Africa, need to work together, and especially through the African Union when we have the All Africa Games, to really develop and look at the specific regions within our continent. You know, it's a very big continent, very spread across, but really strategically look from the African Union point of view on how we can develop through the All Africa Games our infrastructure that can then be followed up and used by an Olympic Games bid. So I know that the AU are looking into those different things, but I really think we need to do it with a lot more purposeful, meaningful debate and selection criteria when we are looking at who's hosting the next All Africa Games and what that looks like. And from the IOC, what we're responsible for, and I think what's working right now, is with Egypt and South Africa coming out and saying that they're interested. Dialogue has already started. And what we now need to work on, and what is exciting, is that we have a number of new regions that are looking at hosting the 2036 Games. You've got the Middle East, you've got India, different parts of Asia, parts of South America, and now Africa. So the interest is there. And now we just need to ensure that we're working closely with all of these countries that are interested so that they fully understand the magnitude of the Olympic Games, but also how we could potentially all find new ways of making the Olympic Games more sustainable and easier to host.
Okay, now we go to Freebert.
Hello, thank you for the opportunity to ask question here. My question is, what do you think about the decentralization of the Olympic Games? Next year, we will have travel times of 6 to 8 hours between Milan and Cortina. The same thing happened 4 years later in France. And for the 2028 Summer Games, there will be more than 2,000 kilometers between LA and Oklahoma City. That's like one part of the games being in Berlin and the other part in Istanbul. What do you think about that?
Thank you. I think that there's always going to be a balance. I think we have to open up to ensuring one of the things I mentioned earlier is the uniqueness of the Olympic Games. And from all of our stakeholders, the feedback that we had was obviously the Olympic Village, the opening and closing ceremonies, the venues, and the compactness. But in today's world, when we are looking at ensuring that we want to remain sustainable, and when we want to encourage new regions of coming on board and hosting the Olympic Games, if there is a venue that is outside of what we normally know as a compact games, I don't think that we should just completely discount it. I think we have to look at being responsible in the decisions that we're taking as an Olympic movement, especially when it comes to venues and specific pressures that and requirements that are put on host cities. You're on mute, Johnny.
We have only 15 minutes, so now we must be quick. Yanis, to you.
Good evening. Hello, Kirsty. I would like to ask you, in less than 1 month, you will visit my home country, Greece, in Costa Navarino, 80 kilometers from ancient Libya, to deliver the leadership of the Olympic movement. Am I so romantic to tell you that it's time to return from the money prizes to the kotikos? I mean the olive rings for the winners. Maybe it's symbolic for you. Thank you.
Thank you. It's very symbolic since my medals I won in Athens. So I'm extremely excited to be coming to Greece for this big moment. And I still have my olive wreaths very proudly displayed. So again, I think at the end of the day, when we're looking at the Olympic Games, it comes down to what are we trying to say? What is the message that we're trying to spread? And I've seen how the Olympic Games changed my life for in an incredible way. And I hope that we can continue doing that in the future by inspiring a new generation.
Thank you very much.
Okay, next, Gunnar. Gunnar, are you there? I don't see your face. Gunnar? If not, we go to Pratana. Pratana is there?
Yes, Gianni, very much. Good evening from India, and thank you for the opportunity, Gianni. And hello, Kirsty. I have a question for you. I think in the history of Olympics, Paris Olympics saw 50-50 participation.
We don't see your face. We don't see your face. Okay.
Am I? Yes.
Okay, now it's okay.
Thank you, Gianni. And, we saw the participation of 50-50 men and women in Paris Olympics, but there was one issue that raised quite a lot of question. While some of the broadcasters, some of the camera crew, filmed the women athlete in different angles and to show the stereotype and some amount of sexism, which raised a lot of questions. How do you want to take up this issue in the near future so that such kind of incidents don't happen? Because women athletes, like they said, and some reports also came up, they don't go there to show their skin, but to prove that they are the best, and they want to show their best in the biggest sporting extravaganza in the world.
Yeah, thank you for your question. I mean, I think we need to ensure that, and what I'm really happy about seeing online today is the number of women journalists, female journalists. But we also know that there are a number of female crew, and we need to encourage that, and we need to ensure that we're really purposefully incorporating that into OBS and what that looks like. And I think if we can do that, we potentially wouldn't have as many of the comments that you have just shared with us coming out.
Okay, next is Aisha.
Thank you.
Aisha from Ghana. Aisha, are you there? Aisha?
Yes.
Okay.
Hi, I'm here. I'm trying to put my camera on. This. Wait a minute. I don't know if it's not working. Yeah.
We are at the last three questions, The last three questions, because if not, we go over the limit that we have set. We have told 1 hour, now we have...
I know I do need to join the Finance Commission meeting, so I'm late already.
Okay, sorry. So, Aisha, please.
Yes. Thank you so, President, for the opportunity. My question basically is about the new executive president of the United States has signed, preventing transgender athletes from participating in women's sports. So if you become the IOC president, I mean, I know he calls on the IOC to take a decision on that. What would be your take in preventing transgender athletes from participating in women's sports, considering that this is just an executive order from the United States? It's not like every other country is also having such an order. Thank you.
Thanks, Aisha. So I answered this right at the beginning. I'm not sure if you were online, but ultimately what I believe we need to do is protect the female category. And how I would suggest we go about doing that is sitting down with all the international federations and agreeing on a framework that is going to do that. I know Gianni challenged me there a little bit to say that could take a little bit of time, but I do believe that the international federations, being the ones to have had already made up specific frameworks for their sports, really have a bit of a jump on us. So as the IOC, bringing them all together and finding a way to lead this conversation and ultimately ensuring that we are going to protect the female category.
You have still time for two quick questions? Okay. Bye. So Raul from Argentina. Open the microphone, Raul.
Hello, hi, grazie Gianni, scusi. Thank you, Kirsty. What are the 5 or maybe 3 main difference you propose compared to Thomas Bach leadership?
Say that again. Sorry, Raul.
Can you tell again? Or tell in Spanish, so that it will be the translation. Raúl.
Sí, ¿cuáles son las principales diferencias que tiene como propuesta Kirsty en relación a la gestión de Thomas Bach?
Thank you, Raul. Well, I think we're two very different people. First and foremost, for me, I think the way in which the IOC communicates would need to change. We have a completely different leadership style. My manifesto, as most of you have seen, is all based off of the Ubuntu philosophy, which is I am because we are. And I know that I've only ever been successful because of the people and the team around me. And that would be how I would want to lead. I would want to ensure that the members are not just being heard, but are actually being quite active and sharing of their experience and their knowledge. And again, we're two very different people. So I think our leadership styles will be very different. But at the end of the day, I do believe that what we do probably share is a love for our movement, the respect for the IOC and for the Olympic Games, and just how strong the power of sport is and what it can do in communities around the world.
Okay, now the last, Elizabeth.
Hello, Ms. Coventry. I would like to ask you a question. You've been on the International Olympic Committee Executive Board for a while. Why weren't you able to make changes there, and what do you think you can do in this new role?
What? Ask that again. Why? What were there specific things that you wanted to be changed? I'm not understanding your question.
Okay, she can repeat. Can you repeat, Elizabeth?
Can I repeat?
Yeah, sure.
You have been in the International Olympic Committee Executive Board for a while.
Yeah.
Why weren't you able to make changes there, and what do you think you can in this new role that you want to win.
Okay. So you're asking what things I would change or didn't change? I'm sorry, I'm really not.
No, she has asked because when you were inside the executive of the IOC,
yeah,
you have not changed something, but now you are not able to change something, perhaps. But what you think that you can change in the position of president?
So for me, sitting on the executive board, I was always able to voice my opinions based off my experience and my knowledge. From the athlete's point of view, we always gave the direct feedback of the athletes. So I don't feel that there was anything during the executive board where the boards that I was sitting on that I was not able to create change or bring change. Now, going forward, what I would like to see is having the executive board play a more significant role in whatever it is. Maybe it is looking at how the vice presidents can have and play specific roles in the programs that are being outlaid and rolled out by the Olympic movement. How can they go and take on some of that responsibility that the president would be able to give to them to go and do? Again, for me,
what happened?
It's not a one-person team. I believe that everyone has a strength, and as a good leader, it's for you to identify that strength and to use that to the best of the ability to ensure the movement remains strong.
Okay, so now this was the last question. I have only one thing to ask you because nobody has spoken about. Now everybody is speaking about the e-games, no?
Oh,
personally,
yes.
I am a little bit surprised because the most important thing is to build a field of play for the young generation. Because if they stay in front of a computer and after there is no field of play outside, they will never go to practice any sport. Because the problem is this, it's a contradiction. Because if somebody is used to stay in front of the computer and you compel him to stay more, to become Olympic champion, he will never go to run or to play football, especially because in so many countries, the playoff field are not so many. So what do you think? I think that is a contradiction now.
So I think it comes down to communication. We as a movement are trying to communicate and talk to young people, and we're trying to influence them into playing sport and encouraging them and inspiring them to play sport. And e-games is huge. We can't deny the fact that it is growing rapidly across the world. So I think that it is an opportunity for us to engage with young people in a completely different atmosphere. I think that we have to be very clear on what role we will play in that environment. And I think we need to make it very clear as to our values and where we are, and not overstepping a specific line, right? So the games that we're going to look at doing, the games that we may look at promoting, what does that look like? Is it actually sport? All of those questions, I believe we need to have very clear answers on, and never go get murky, if that makes sense.
Okay, so I thank you very much. You were so nice. Now I remind you that from 13 to 17 of May, we will have our Congress in Rabat in Africa. And as president of the IOC, or if not president, you are always welcome to come with us to discuss about the problem of journalism and sport, because it's very important in this moment. So we thank you very much, and see you soon.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.